Hello and welcome to the Undercut Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Thiemo Daily, and we are back this time for a preview episode of the American Grand Prix. American as in Austin, because I've just remembered we've had 2 Grand Prix in America so far this year, with this being the second one, and it's going to get even more confusing next year. But enough of that for now, because I am joined, as always, by my 2 excellent co-hosts, Ellie-May Taylor and Jesse Billington. How are you both?
You could have been better. I had sort of fluish symptoms through today. I think this might have just been a case of I knocked my immune system for 6 yesterday doing a 10K cross country that was a lot harder than anticipated. So I've spent most of today wondering why my teeth hurt and my nose won't stop running.
Ellie-May will probably say that's what you get for running.
Yeah, I hate running. And I guess my weekend been a pretty poor weekend, just looking after a sick cat. But if you are getting flu, I'd recommend a humidifier, because that's been doing wonders for the 4th cat that's got a cold.
Humidifier?
A humidifier, yes.
Perhaps give that a shot. Anyway, that's... Talking
of giving things a shot, we'll go straight into the news with what the hell has happened. And who's getting a shot this weekend, Jesse?
Well, I think everyone is. We'll talk about some of them in turn, but Pietro Fittipaldi will drive for Haas as their rookie for the mandated FP1 sessions in Mexico and Abu Dhabi, respectively. So he's not coming out in America, but session afterwards in Abu Dhabi, in Mexico, and 2 races later in Abu Dhabi, we'll see him on circuit once again. And of course, we saw Pietro race twice, filling in for Romain Grosjean in 2020. And where after Grosjean's mega crash, Pietro didn't do too badly. It was a bit of a pig of a car, in all fairness, but he did all right, given things. So it'll be interesting to see how he does with a slightly better chassis and a very differently active chassis, I think, as well, will be the key thing.
Someone who is making their debut this weekend is Teo Porcher, who finally been making his debut for Alfa Romeo, sitting in for Valtteri Bottas for FP1. Not obviously on the grid full-time next year in 2023 for Alfa Romeo, but probably as close as he's going to get for a while. He's been confirmed as well as one of their reserve drivers, I believe, for next year. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do in that car, especially considering his performance in F2. It's not been bad this year by any stretch of imagination, but it's worse, quote unquote, than it was the previous year. And he's going to be wanting to really impress if he wants to make Alfa Romeo realize that they made a mistake in signing Joe, which is going to be pretty hard to do, let's face it. But I'll be very intrigued to see what he can do there.
I think his season has, worse in air quotes. It hasn't been worse through any fault of his own, I think, is a key element to remember here. A lot of his faults have come from... too soon. Yeah, he should have... Ideally, would have moved on from F2 last year, but then it got weirdly competitive this year. There were some team issues. It just wasn't a good season for him through a lot of reasons that weren't his own. But it'll be interesting to see what he can do in an F1 car and sort of what times he can post compared to the likes of Zhou or Bottas in later sessions. So we'll have to wait and see on that front.
And interestingly, it's just been confirmed for the 1 session because of Guan Yu Zhou technically filling out that role way back in Bahrain. So it's all or nothing really for Porcher.
Yeah, he's only got this 1 shot to prove his F2 might, and it'll be interesting to see how he does. Again, there might be a few IndyCar lights or IndyCar sort of talent scouts stood at the sidelines watching, which again, it's going to prove a worthwhile session for him to either show what he can do in F1 or potentially what he can do with regards to American motorsports. So we'll have to see how that one pans out for him. All the best for it. All the best to him for it.
And talking of American motorsport drivers, Ellie-May, who are 2 other people that are making their debut, or at least one of them is making their debut this weekend.
Also, could you read this out like one of the IndyCar announcers? Because I've never heard their names pronounced English. I've only ever heard them pronounced in an American way.
Oh, God. I'll just do it the way that I'm going to do it.
I'd intended her to do it.
Yes. Mainly because
accent.
I haven't heard the IndyCar people say it. So, yes, the 2 people that will also be getting their first taste of a Formula One weekend are Alex Palou and Pato O'Ward. Is that how you say their names?
It's close enough. Yeah, we're looking at this weekend. We've got Alex Palou and Pato O'Ward coming out in the FP1 sessions for McLaren.
There you go. Yes, they're both going to be driving for McLaren in a pre-practice 1. They've both previously driven last year's car in private testing, but now, yes. So now 2021 World IndyCar champion Paolo will take Ricciardo's seat in free practice one at this weekend's US Grand Prix, and O'Ward will take Lando Norris's seat in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
And you'd think they're missing a shot there by not putting O'Ward in at the Mexican Grand Prix, considering he is Mexican, but what the heck do I know?
Yeah, potentially McLaren think they might have a good shot at something in Mexico and want to give their drivers as much seat time for that one. Potentially they know it's a circuit they might run well at. They ran well there last year. And
you seem to forget they want to screw over Ricciardo whenever they can, though.
This is ultimately true, yeah, but there's every hope again.
Which is why he's not Ricciardo's not driving in FP1 at Austin, one of his favourite places.
Yeah, but he'll have the energy of Texas around him for that one, so you won't need it as much. Mexico, he needs a little more maybe there. So, but again, we're here now.
We'll wait and see what happens. They aren't the only drivers that are driving in FP1 sessions this weekend. There's one more on the list. Well, I think there's a few more on the list, but the one we've got on our news list is
Logan Sargent, who will be stepping in for Alex Albon, I believe, in the Williams in FP1. American driver, American track, not an American team, but 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Currently competing for P2 in the championship in Formula 2 and potentially going to be in that Williams seat next year alongside Alex Albon. So it's going to be very interesting to see what he can do there. And obviously no word yet on if he will join Alex Albon, because we need to wait until after the final round of the F2 Championship in Abu Dhabi to find out if he's got a high enough place finish to get the super license points that he will need to do that. And that's going to be something we can discuss, maybe not even in the Abu Dhabi review, depending on what happens there. So we will find out in due course. But again, will be very interesting to see what happens there, because we'll have 3 drivers this weekend, or even not on the weekend, that'll be on Friday. Friday will be quite an interesting day to see how they match up, not only against each other, but against their teammates for that session, the drivers that they'll be standing in for, and against everyone else. So you've got McLaren, Williams, and Alfa Romeo there. And a track that is inspired by Suzuka. It's quite fast. It's got bits of Silverstone in it. And it's a proper track as well, which you see the likes of NASCAR, IndyCar, and MotoGP go around there. So it's a track to test people out. Yes, Jesse.
Don't forget Robert Schwartzman, who's also driving for Ferrari.
Oh Christ, yes. Who's he driving? Haas. Yes.
No, he's with Ferrari.
Ferrari. My God. Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so what's that? Nearly half the field has got an FP1 seat that isn't their own, or an FP1 sort of junior seat on the go.
Nearly half of half, but yeah.
Well, how many is that? Let's see. Oh, no.
That's 5.
Yeah, so half.
Essentially, the teams have just forgotten that they have to have a rookie test.
But I said teams. There's only 10 teams, Thiemo. It's not 1993.
Okay. Just ignoring you as usual. What were you saying, Ellie-May?
Essentially, the teams have just kind of forgotten that they actually have to have a rookie test. And they're all just going to do it in America.
A bit of Sakir and Bahrain 2020, where it's just kind of, we've got all these new kind of, it's all this kind of chaos going in here now, and we've got a couple extra people. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Hang on, isn't Giovinazzi also for Haas as well?
This weekend?
Yeah.
Quite possibly.
Hang on, let me just check this. Yeah, has to run Giovinazzi in 2 FP1 sessions in 2022. He was there for the Italian Grand Prix, and he'll be there for Austin as well. So that's
crikey.
Yeah. There we go.
Essentially, it's just a new grid.
Hang on. So why is Pietro Fittipaldi running 2 sessions if they've already got Giovinazzi doing a session? Unless Giovinazzi's is surplus to requirement for testing reasons.
He doesn't fit the requirements, I guess.
Oh, yeah, true. Yeah, he's no longer a rookie. I forgot that.
You know those 2 and a bit, 3 seasons that he spent in F1 before where you swooned over him like a schoolgirl?
Yeah, that's true. So perhaps he's just doing it for engine reasons then. But anyway.
Essentially, we have no idea what we're doing on this podcast.
That is pretty much what we say to you every week.
We try and hide it really well.
The other little bit of news that we have, though, is that Pedro de la Rosa, of all people, has joined Aston Martin as a driver ambassador, which means about as much as you want to shake your stick at, because I'm not really sure what that entails these days. It's a very vague term, and they have a few of them. And it does seem like they're assembling some kind of B or C list Marvel team at Aston Martin, the purpose for which we're not entirely sure of. And it's a name that we haven't heard really mentioned in a while. And I guess we'll see him at a few more races.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, technically, Jess Hawkins, also a driver ambassador for Aston Martin, but she doesn't do a lot of actual driving for them. She appears in YouTube videos and does their promotional bits, but no actual F1 stuff. So I don't think we're going to see
some nice Aston Martin merch, and that's about it.
Yeah, she sells Aston Martin merch, but beyond that, it seems limited.
And Ellie-May doesn't care for that unless it's a bubble hat or a bucket hat. So
to be fair,
they do good bucket hats.
But the Aston Martin bobble hat. Jess Hawkins knows how to rep a bobble hat, and to be fair,
that's why I mentioned them.
Do you have that to hand just in case we need props at any point? For the audio,
you've got one in every room of the house.
Ellie-May has just put on her Circuit Paul Ricard bucket hat over her headphones, so it's sort of sitting quite proud of her head, like a badly rendered Wii emoji or person from.
Essentially, looks like when Sebastian Vettel does his like mushroom impression by putting the helmet
when he balances his helmet
head
on top of his head.
Yeah.
On to slightly more serious things. There's still no answer re the cost cap infringements, although Zach Brown has accused Red Bull of cheating. Not directly, but he wrote a big open letter to all the other teams that haven't been caught with their pants down around the cost cap thing, saying that those exceeding the cost cap are essentially cheating. And the interesting thing is Williams were fined $25,000 early this year for a procedural breach, which is roughly what we've seen with Aston Martin. So we're assuming something similar is going to come out of the works there. However, Zach Brown's letter,
if it was a higher fine just because it's Aston Martin, they have more money.
Like, you guys have money to burn. Let's just take more of it. But Zach Brown's letter does go on to state that 2020 acted as a dress rehearsal for the cost caps. It gave everyone a chance to sort of tune up and figure out how they were going to sort of meet the cost cap. So no one really had an excuse for this coming as a surprise, and also gave people a chance to seek clarification and sort things out, sort of post it so they knew what to do. So, and his letter also suggests that Red Bull's cost cap for 2023 should be reduced by their overspend, and a penalty handed down on top of that, as well as reduced time for CFD and wind tunnel time. He's also called for the 5% window to be lowered to 2.5. He'd also like a lot of transparency over the matter. Basically, Zach Brown wants a lot of things around this because it's, I don't know, I guess he's come in way under budget despite hiring a bazillion drivers. He's still got money to spend. So I
do agree with him on the transparency thing, because we don't want to repeat a Ferrari 2019 where there was just this deal done behind closed doors and we're still not really sure about if anything happened consequence-wise there for them. And as these are new regulations, new era, et cetera, if you want the fans to get behind them and for it to be as interactive a sport/entertainment thing as they say, then you can't really hide that then, especially when you've got Netflix hunting around every corner. You wouldn't, if you're the FIA in Formula One, you don't want someone at Netflix finding out before, not necessarily even before you release it, but instead of you releasing it, they find out and they can break it on Drive to Survive, because then you look really in the shit and you've just fueled it even more than it needs to be. And like Ellie-May was saying either last week or the week before, the media on this have been blown so much out of proportion, potentially in comparison to what the consequences for it will be, that surely you'd just be transparent about it now and nip it in the bud. And I feel like if they'd done that from the start, Zach Brown wouldn't necessarily even had to write this letter.
Well, I think it's ironic that he wants transparency, because yes, on the one hand, I do agree.
You still don't like him for Ricciardo, do you?
But I also think teams want transparency until they're the team in question.
Oh, yeah, this is certainly a thing. If you think about playing any board game with your family at Christmas, you want everyone to follow the rules until you can break the rules for your own personal benefit. Like, oh, no one's allowed to rob the bank during Monopoly.
Jesse. Loopholes.
No one's allowed to rob the bank during Monopoly unless I rob the bank during Monopoly, in which case it's fine. Or, no, if I put it over 2 of these squares in Scrabble, I get triple the points. Are you sure that's a rule? It's a rule for me. And you can see how it spirals from there. I felt that was perfectly reasonable to end that on. We'll move on to something slightly more serious than me.
I was waiting for Ellie-May to do a transition there, but she didn't. So.
No, I was just going to... I didn't... To be fair, I didn't think there's anything good as a link between Scrabble and W Series. I think W is worth 4 in Scrabble.
I was going to say turning about twists in the back there. We were meant to have W Series, but Jesse's using Scrabble. W Series not being here.
Scrabbling for money.
Yeah, there we go. We'll go with that one. Scrabbling for money, on the other hand, is, well, not Ellie-May personally, but Ellie-May with the news on W Series.
Yes, this is the first of 3 races that W Series should have been attending, and it's been obviously cut early because of money issues. And I think it's a real shame because I guess America would have been a great place. I mean, I know they did Miami, but it would have been great then to come back for W Series to drive there again, because America have so many car series themselves that if W Series can shed a light on all these amazing women drivers, then someone like IndyCar or something can look at them and they have more of a chance. And now that's kind of been taken away from them because we're no longer doing the US, Mexico and Brazil.
It was Mexico and Mexico.
It was just Mexico twice, but yes.
Oh, was it just Mexico and Mexico? Okay. I knew there was 3. I thought they did different.
No, they're rounding out like they did with this at the start of the season with a double header.
They did 2. Did they do 2?
2 in Miami and then they're closing
yeah.
the 2 in Mexico. There's the double M again in that same neck of the woods, but...
Well, they were going to go to Mexico this year because they didn't get the chance last year, so they wanted to do a double header to make up for that. And now that means that if we get W Series next year, we'll have to do a triple header at Mexico just to make up for all the time lost. Which I'm not against, to be honest. Do it one way, then do it in reverse, and then do the Formula E configuration. So it's perfectly doable.
Or do it with a reverse grid from the result of the previous one or a race or something.
Do all of it,
Yeah.
Keep it spicy. It's Mexico. It's all good.
Yeah.
One final bit of news-ish is that future of COTA and F1 is I was listening to our friends over at Lakeside Drive Down Under earlier in their preview podcast, which went on more tangents than we've gone on so far over the entire duration, which was quite something, I must say. But I couldn't find the story itself, but I find the idea that one of them brought up quite interesting, that I think it's Bobby Epstein is the guy who's in charge of COTA. I don't think there's a relation. You can check that. And he was saying how he would love, apparently, for F1, IndyCar and MotoGP to all take place at COTA over one weekend for some kind of mega event at some point in the future. And considering that the only real support series we've had with F1 at COTA is W Series, and obviously that's not happening this year, maybe won't happen at Austin next year, regardless of which way that goes. It could just be interesting. And in terms of an Americanization of the sport and entertainment, you've got 3 very different motorsport disciplines, but all very good in their own regard. And I just wanted to put that out there and see what you two thought about it.
I think it would be a bit too busy, and you then don't end up not celebrating each series in their own right. And
you could argue that for F2 and F3, though, surely, when they support F1. I'm not saying IndyCar and MotoGP would support it, but we've had plenty of busy weekends over an F1 weekend.
Yeah, but I'm actually basing this on my own experience. When over a weekend I went and watched Mamma Mia.
I knew it'd be relevant to F1.
Yep. On the Friday, I then went to Goodwood Festival of Speed on the Saturday, and I went to see Elton John on the Sunday. And whilst I look back and loved them all, I think because they were all so clumped together, I don't love them as much as I could because they didn't have enough breathing space on their own because there's so much going on and it's so busy that I think you need to have them separately.
I see what you're trying to say, but I feel like you just have a musical problem rather than the motorsport problem there. And I feel like that's a different issue.
I'm surprised they didn't have a headache.
We're getting one.
I would like to see IndyCar and F1 racing at the same weekend, because I think that'd be really interesting to put them through the same conditions, same circuit, see the parallels.
Early IndyCar is roughly 14 to 16 seconds slower than F1, and it's slightly slower than F2. So that would be the only reason why I could see IndyCar not being in favour of that. But at the same time, the potential for some kind of one-off event. I mean, I wrote an article a while back about should F1 bring back non-championship races. Maybe this would be a fun way to have them all across a weekend where it doesn't impact anything. It's just it's like a friendly football match. But again, there's nothing confirmed at all of this. It's just hearsay, but it's just an interesting idea that would potentially be worth exploring at some point, especially if we don't know how long the F1 craze is going to last in America. We hope for a little while at least, just because it would be good for teams to come in and all this kind of thing, and drivers. But maybe this would be something for 5 years down the road.
I think it'd definitely be something worth putting together. I mean, loads of series race around COTA. Like you've got around the actual full circuit, F1, LMP1s, IndyCars, Formula V8s, LMP2s, Indy Lights, DPI, DP, LMPCs. You've got lists of series going around that. Yeah, even NASCAR go around. They're not very fast at all. But you've even got things like the Trans Am series as well, MotoGP, Moto2s, Moto Americas, the Ferrari Challenge races there. You've got
F4, actually, USF4.
Yeah, USF4.
I think as well.
Did that recently.
That's what we like about Austin, because it's a purpose-built track made for racing. So it brings with it fun and entertainment.
Yeah, I think it was designed to be an entertaining circuit, and despite being a Tilkedrome, it has proven to be one. It's not one of Herman Tilke's sort of usual bore fests. Although one thing I will quickly throw in on a completely stupid tangent is a chap called, from the North America Talent Cup, which is for motorcycle racing, on an Aprilia RS 250 SP2 in 2022. A chap called Jesse Shedden set the lap record for that series around the track. So that's pretty cool. Just chucking that out there.
All I'm going to say is that whilst you're smiling and saying that, I don't know what you're doing with your arm, but it looks like you're jerking off on camera.
I'm not. I'm just scratching the top of my foot. That's all.
You found a stat about someone called Jesse and you thought, oh, I know exactly what to do with this.
It's the top of my foot. I can't believe you said jerking off live on the podcast. I'm going to try and edit around that now.
Have fun
I'm
with
just
that.
leave it in and just put beeps in, so that's not even going to hide it. I don't know.
But that does lead us neatly, not into the last time out just yet, but an interesting stat of the week that I found when just doing a little bit of
homework. How does that lead into it? How does me scratching my foot lead neatly into this?
Because it's unnecessary, and so is this fact.
Okay, I'll allow it.
Currently in 10th place in the Drivers' Championship, Bottas has now failed to score any points in the last 8 Grand Prix with Alfa Romeo, which seems quite ridiculous when you think about it, but is somehow true. And he's now under threat from the likes of Vettel, who is having a bit of a good second half of his final season so far. And it'd be very interesting to see him come back and just claw that 10th place away from Bottas, which in itself is still a disappointing way for a 4-time champion to win his career. But at the same time, I wouldn't be against it.
I mean, looking at the big spreadsheet I keep of all the drivers and their points over the season, I sort of traced and extended Seb's line to look at if he continued this trajectory against the rest of the grid, he would end up about 5th place by the end of the season. So it's not all doom and gloom in that regard.
It just proves my point from way back that I said that Aston Martin are doing a lot better the second half of the season.
Aston Martin or Sebastian Vettel?
No, I'm going to go Aston Martin.
But Lance Stroll is just unable to extract those developments from the car.
He has been getting points.
Not as many.
Not as many as Vettel. Vettel's got more by himself than 3 other teams on the grid combined since the summer break.
That's why he's a 4-time world champion. But
no, I was hoping you were going to try and defend Stroll there, and I noticed you just didn't.
You did a Liz Truss and just didn't answer the question there.
I'm going to do even more of a Liz Truss and go on to a completely separate note.
And cheese for us.
She's opening new pork markets in China. It's all right, you've got BBC Radio York after this.
But COTA was the first circuit to have a sub 2-second pit stop. In it's not like the official one because they were doing this before the fastest pit stops were sort of made official. So it's like the unofficial official.
The DHL Pit Stop Award.
Yeah. And it was with Red Bull and Mark Webber in 2013, 1.92 seconds.
Huh. Was that for like a stunt demonstration thing or actually during a race?
During the race.
Webber was still racing in 2013?
Yeah, it's his final season in them too.
Yeah. It just seems really late for him to still be racing, that's all.
Because it was his final season.
Yeah, that's true. There's obviously a good reason for it. Yeah. Anyway, are we ready?
We're not going to put this man in charge of a history lesson.
We are. But the good thing is he did his revision for this history lesson. It's time for last time out at the US Grand Prix. Of course, the question is, when did we last go there? 2021, we were there last year, although we missed out going there in 2020 due to coronavirus. The question is, how did it pan out in 2021? Well, all things considered, it was pretty decent. The title battle was still raging, so there was a lot still to play for. Max was at this point just 6 points ahead of Lewis. Bottas was in third by a long way, and Norris, of all people, was in a pretty close fourth. Not a bad season for little Nozza, to be fair. Qualifying played out largely as expected, with Max and Lewis locking out the front row. Lewis got away well, the ailing Red Bull gearbox already showing signs of a hard season, and it would be something that would go on to bite Max Verstappen in his ass the rest of the season as well. That Red Bull was not getting off the line happily. Decent race between Sainz and the McLarens set off from early on, with the Sainz having to battle both former teammate Lando Norris and his replacement Daniel Ricciardo, both of them up in sort of around P5, P6 area, which says a lot about how well the McLarens were doing early on in that race. Pretty much going into turn one, Latifi, however, did get sandwiched by the Haas and ended up tagging Lance Stroll, so the two Canadians came together there. Max later would go on to pull the undercut on the Mercedes and snatch a lead from it, while Giovinazzi had a very good battle with Alonso for, I think it was 10th place or something, the two of them pushing each other wide lap after lap after lap. It was pretty good racing, to be fair. A slow yield from Mick gives Max the advantage, though, coming through the final or the penultimate lap, meaning he can DRS past Mick Schumacher down the pit straight and get clear of Lewis Hamilton behind, meaning that Max could go on and take the win. But it was, by all accounts, a pretty close race that culminated with a weird bull car for the Red Bull pit crew to sit on, and Shaquille O'Neal reminding us of just how tall he is. On before that, there was all the grid walk gate, which I remember writing a piece on for Drive Tribe, the good old days of Drive Tribe.
Did Martin Brundle ever take up Megan Thee Stallion's offer of singing with her at Glastonbury?
I don't.
He's going to do it with Yuki at some point. They're also going to be all three of them.
Oh, could you imagine? Pierre Gasly.
Eddie Jordan on drums.
Oh, they got to have Pierre Gasly in there as well. Those two harmonised so beautifully in that video from AlphaTauri. So the question is, how does that look if we turn it all into numbers and chuck some data at a wall? Well, if we add some numbers into all this, the last year was the 50th running of the United States Grand Prix, spread over some 10 different locations. Though, for the sake of accuracy, we'll just focus on the COTA years, as they're the ones that are going to be relevant to trying to make any sensible predictions. So 2012 onwards, ignoring 2020 when COVID said no, McLaren won in 2012 with Lewis. Seb and Red Bull took the title in 2013. Lewis won for 4 years on the trot from 2014 through 17. Kimi famously won in 2018 with his "I know what I'm doing" line. He won that for Ferrari. It was their first win in God knows how long. Bottas
67 years.
67 years it was. It was also Kimi's first win since the Lotus
and final win.
Final win as well. Bottas took the win for Mercedes in 2019, and last year Max won. So Ferrari have one win, as do a very different era of McLaren, although back to Mercedes engines, as they had done when they last won here. Red Bull have 2 wins, and Mercedes have 5. I'm trying to remember where I'm in my script because I'm so dosed up on painkillers and flu medication.
Battle forecast.
Correction, yes, battle forecast. I'll cut that bit. So with all that in mind, how does that look as a battle forecast? Lewis is hugely dominant around here, but the car isn't with him as much this year as it has been previously, and in the high-speed nature of the circuit, and this doesn't look set to be a Mercedes-happy track. However, ignoring the elevation, a lot of COTA apes Silverstone in nature, especially that first sector, which is a lot like Maggots and Beckett's. And Lewis had a decent time of things early this year at Silverstone. albeit in very different conditions. Red Bull will be at home here with the long straights to satiate their need for speed with their oodles of power, however. Ferrari, though, might not have a tyre struggle, as this is often a two-stop race, removing their poor tyre deg from the equation. Ellie-May, you have a point.
Yes, I've been thinking about tyre strategy and how they're going to do it. Because last year it was a two-stop with most drivers started on the medium, then went hard and then hard again. And that was the most desirable because Perez went medium, medium, hard because he didn't have an extra set of hard tyres available to him. But he ended up being 40 seconds behind Verstappen and Hamilton. So it kind of seems like hards would be the way to go. But if you look at the hard tyres this year, they haven't been particularly favourable. So I looked at 2019 and there was huge tyre variety. So the winner, Bottas, went medium, hard, medium. Hamilton in second just had the one stop with medium, hard. Verstappen did the same as Bottas in third. Leclerc in fourth went medium, hard, soft. Albon in fifth was forced to stop on lap one. So then he went soft, medium, medium, soft. And Danny Rick in sixth went soft, then hard. So I think actually you could play around with the tyre strategy somewhat, and it could be quite interesting.
I definitely think teams are going to be averse to the hard compound. We're running C2, C3, C4s this weekend, I believe. And the harder compounds, the Pirelli have got this year are not very good tyres. Even if it's a hot day and the circuit's hot, there is very little grip coming out of those tyres. So I can see teams being potentially averse from them or running a very high downforce setup to try and get the heat into those tyres so they can then get them to last a bit longer. It really could be a question of drive. If a team can turn on the hards, they might be able to make this a one-stopper. If not, expect some interesting strategy, as Ellie-May has suggested there. Thiemo, did you have a point to throw in on that one?
I did, and I have immediately forgotten what it was. So I'll just let the tyre degradation conversation take over.
That's okay then. So that's our tyre drag. However, when it comes to drivers, it's still all to play for, ignoring Max Verstappen. I can probably see some Sergio favouring strats come through if he's in the right place to utilise them. Red will be looking to press home their advantage in the teams as best as possible. They've already got Max the championship. So the question is, can they really seal the deal with a very dominant teams drive by giving Sergio Perez some wins? Why not? It's not going to cost them anything. So all in, I think it's beyond reason to say that any of the top three, however, could have someone on the grid this week, on the podium this weekend. They'll all have someone on the grid this weekend, that's for certain. Hopefully, otherwise it'll be very chaotic if only the teams don't put anyone forwards. But again, that's the flu talking. We'll move on to the weather forecast. And the weather forecast this weekend is set to be warm and dry, 29 to 31 degrees Celsius across the weekend, with a very, very low chance of rain. So now I've predicted the weather, let's have some race predictions.
Pole position, I have decided that much like you were saying, there's nothing to lose if Red Bull decide to let Perez out of the box a bit and win a bit more. We've got nothing to lose at this point. Everything's wrapped up and I've accepted my fate in our prediction standings, and anything else that could happen here, I will just take gladly. With that in mind, I feel like this sounds very mean for me to predict Carlos Sainz on pole, as if that's a completely unlikely thing to happen. But I think he did well last year during the race, relatively, and he likes it around here. And why not? It'd be nice to have a Ferrari pole that isn't Charles, just for the sake of variety, if nothing else. And it would be just good for him to show that whilst it doesn't technically matter at this point in the season, because the Drivers' Championship's all wrapped up, it would be good for him to just show that there is not that clear number one driver at Ferrari, perhaps.
I say the Driver Championship isn't wrapped up. We know who's won it. We don't know who's come second, third, fourth, or fifth yet. That's all still very much up for contention. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But I mean, down a similar vein, I reckon that Red Bull are going to throw a lot of things Sergio Perez's way. And if he can get pole, which is my prediction, I don't see them sort of not favouring him through the race. There could be a little cheeky Max Verstappen toe just to see if they can get him onto pole. And again, there's a big Red Bull following in America, and I reckon there'll be a lot of people that are happy to see Sergio Perez on that podium, the pole position especially.
I'll sacrifice that for pure dominance in Mexico from Perez, though.
Oh, just you wait till I get to Mexico predictions now.
Is it all just Perez?
Yeah, he's going to completely cover
your
the
one
podium.
prediction? Perez.
Yeah. It's just Perez 1, 2, 3, and that's it.
It would have to be very carefully planned, wouldn't it, for to get a tow around the Americas? Because whilst it's big long straights that like the tows, you've then got the real sort of squiggly tight parts.
I think if you can nail the last sector just before the start finish straight, you should be fine.
Unless they do something where, was it in...
And by they, you mean Ferrari, right?
No. Well, I was going to say, was it in Spa when... it might not have been Spa.
Well, what's your example? First, I would tell you.
When during qualifying, they had one driver would give the team member a huge tow up the straight.
I think it was
and
Spa.
then get out the way for them to then carry on.
Camel Straight, I think, wasn't it? They just followed them up a route through there and then pull aside to let them just go for it.
It was definitely Ferrari attempted that this year, but I remember they absolutely ballsed it up as a strategy as well. I remember they got it catastrophically wrong by releasing Charles Leclerc at the wrong time. He was too close to Sainz.
Yes, but...
Anyway, that doesn't answer who your pole position prediction is, Ellie-May.
It's Leclerc. Just because he is very good at poles. And I think maybe now that the stress is obviously definitely off of him now to win the championship. So he may just, try and have some fun, and it may make him just more relaxed and even quicker.
It's not a silly prediction.
Definitely not a silly prediction. We were supposed to be joined by one of our American friends, Megan Maurer, who joined us way back at the beginning of the season. I was going to say Spain, if you had let me, honestly. Some people. Anyway, yes. She's unfortunately ill. We wish her well, and she's probably listening to this. So, hi, Megan. And her pole position prediction is very safe in that it is Max Verstappen. There wasn't a reasoning, but I don't think there really needs to be one.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. I mean, he's been pretty dominant to this point, and there's nothing to say he's not going to keep trying and just basically look to wipe the floor with everyone by the end of this season, which is quite a real possibility. So
it's also why I've predicted him for first place on the podium on my podium predictions list. So I'm going to say,
led into it so neatly. Go on, then. What's the rest of it?
I thought I had done a quite nice job there, if I do say so myself. So Verstappen, then Sainz in second, who will fight valiantly, but will not have what it takes, unfortunately, to convert that pole. And then Lewis Hamilton, because you say Mercedes, not that one, but at the same time, I predicted a little bit of spice because it's Austin, and it's always I can't remember really have there being a dull race. There's always a little bit of something at Austin. So why not have Hamilton a third and Mercedes resurgence to come back at Ferrari, at least challenge them for that second spot in the constructors?
It's an interesting call.
Yeah, I've similarly gone for a Max Verstappen win, because I think that why not break another record and try and get the most wins of a season? He only needs, 2 more to match Vettel?
One more to equal. One more to equal.
So then 2 to get the record.
But he's not allowed to win Mexico, because otherwise he will need it to be Day of the Dead in order to get resurrected, because the Mexicans won't stand for it.
I mean, he's too far off at this point as well to have the best win percentage in a season. I think it's Fangio or Farina that still holds that from the days when there was 3 races in a season and all you have to do is win 2
all
of
the
them.
more reason to have less races.
Because it means there's more weighting on each of them. But or make more of them so Max can sort of spread his wins out over more interesting locations. I don't know.
You shut your damn mouth, Jesse.
But as well, I've gone for a Max Verstappen win because I think due to the dual personality of this track, with the combination of the high speed and then the real technical sections, I think round 1 lap, Ferrari would be very good. But in a race, I think Red Bull will probably have it.
Is that not the story of their entire season?
You can copy paste that line from Ellie-May to any one of our race previews and you'll be, the girl is talking sense. And yeah.
Well, unless Ferrari want to go different in their strategy, they always go for a higher downforce to be
different
good in the real
means
technical
bad
section.
And wrong, though.
Which they do need to change it up. But do I think they're going to? No. So that's why I have predicted the Max Verstappen win, and then I've gone for Sergio Perez in second, so that they can carry on getting Sergio Perez that second spot in the Drivers' Championship, and they can get more points in the Constructors, and then a Charles Leclerc third.
I will make a slight amendment to your thing there where you're saying about that and say that I've completely forgotten my bloody point.
That was me getting things wrong this week at this recording.
Not wrong, forgotten.
Both not doing very well, I think, is the baseline of this.
It was such a good point as well.
Never mind. That good. I actually remembered it. While Thiemo remembers what he was about to say, I might as well give my podium prediction, which is Sergio Perez win, Carlos Sainz second, George Russell third. I don't think there's too much explained to that one. It's sort of a variation, really, on Thiemo's of Red Bull wins, Sainz second, and Mercedes third.
I still can't remember.
Sainz in the podium.
It's a solid bet of Sainz podium.
You like it, but you didn't predict it.
I didn't predict it so that it would happen.
The reverse commentator's curse.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking it's got some sections that are quite similar to Silverstone. He was very good at Silverstone. So
you've gone.
I remembered what I was going to say.
Oh, go on quickly before you forget. Go on quick.
The amendment for Ellie-May's thing is like Ferrari. Yes, they will try a different strategy. Actually, it just won't be the right one. You said they won't go differently, but they will. It just won't work.
Yeah, they'll go in the wrong direction with their strategy changes. That's for certain. We're going to try a no-stop race around a high-deck circuit. Yes,
and you have to pit. It's mandatory.
Yeah, so they'll
technically you pit when you come in for Parc Ferme.
Yeah.
So
as you come down the pit lane to park up in Parc Ferme, you pit stop and then set off because
don't they pit. Don't you go into Parc Ferme before you get to the pits, though?
Not at COTA.
You go with the pit line.
And especially in COTA, you come in and it's lined up. It'll be Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, I think, because they run off last year's championship order is the order they lay them out down the pit lane. So all Ferrari has to do is come in, pit, and then head down to Parc Ferme and park up, and they might be okay with that. It's cutting it a bit.
It's another brilliant Ellie-May strategy.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. We'll see how it plays out for them.
Yeah, speaking of Ellie-May strategy, bold isn't needed there.
This is very true. Before we move on from the podiums, we need to hear Megan Maurer's podium.
She has gone for Max Verstappen win. She has put Carlos Sainz on the podium, Ellie-May, in second place, and put Charles Leclerc in third.
Oh.
Which I can only attribute to she's ill, delusional, and hoping for the best.
Not used to British strength Lemsip. It's knocked her for a 6 with that one, apparently.
Oh, but yes, that is what we're going for there. Fastest lap,
probably. She can't even defend herself.
We're being kind. We're giving her excuses.
We're being nice. We're giving her excuses when this doesn't happen.
It didn't. No.
She's also a long-standing friend of the podcast in much the same way that we did happily insult Jacob Phillips to his face. I think we could at least get away with a similar vein with Megan of some light-hearted.
Well, we mentioned Jacob. Happy birthday.
Is his birthday? Oh, it is as well, isn't it?
Happy birthday.
And guess where he is?
Is he in the pub?
And the pub.
He is indeed.
Oh, good lad.
And probably will be when he listens to this. So there we go.
He'll be listening to this staggering home from the pub at some point. He'll have a sort of kebab in one hand, his headphones in, listening to us, wishing him a happy birthday, and he'll be all drunk and confused. It'll be good.
No,
Ellie-May, would you like to do a Marilyn Monroe and sing Happy Birthday, Mr. President to
him? No.
Would you like to rap it instead? We know that's more your jam.
No, I was just going to say he could be so drunk that our podcast may make sense.
That's not actually a bold call at all. That's quite fair. We'll move on from talking about someone who isn't even on this week's podcast and is celebrating their birthday to fastest lap. Thiemo,
Ellie-May, I'm going to go to you first, actually, because that is a bold call.
Yes. Oof. Jeez,
Fernando Alonso.
Is that not your wild prediction? Oh, no, it's not. Jesus.
They could go hand in hand. Spoilers later.
They could go hand in hand. I think with the high-speed nature of COTA, I think Alpine will do well at this track. This
is true. They do have one of the highest top speed trap runs across the season. Like Monza and Baku, they've set some pretty fast times through there. They're 200 and something miles an hour. They are quick.
Which is also why I think George Russell could be the one to get fastest lap, because he's a quick boy. when he wants to be.
Yeah.
I don't need much more logic for this.
My theory with Mercedes, which has failed the past 2 times that I've said this, due to the bumpy nature of the track, it may not favour them and it just gets bumpier and bumpier, doesn't it? Because it's built on marshland.
Yeah.
It's true. It is kind of always moving.
Yeah, it's built on like a reclaimed surface. Mm-hmm.
But despite all that, I think George will be out in kind of a no man's land because he's been in that position quite a bit this season and just say, sod it, let's stick some soft on towards the end and go for that fastest lap point. And maybe it'll be that point that helps them get Ferrari in the constructors.
To be fair,
Yes,
our theories may merge because
this is frightening.
Yes. He may not be doing well in the race, so goes for the fastest pit stop to take a point off of either Sergio Perez or Charles Leclerc, who's got the fastest lap, to take away that point so that either he gets it or no one gets it, to try and tighten up second place.
I do also love how you gave Mercedes the fastest pit stop as well there. So thank you for that.
Fastest lap. Sorry.
Jesse?
Sergio Perez, the Red Bull's quick. He's going to be leading the race. There's going to be no one ahead of him. No traffic. Away he goes. Quick lap. Bye. So job done.
Megan has gone for Mr. Sir Lewis Hamilton.
Oh.
Which he does love COTA. So again, potentially if he's in third place like he is on my podium and he can't quite catch Max or Carlos, that extra point, and he's got the gap behind him, you could see him going for that and just going, speed.
He is the most successful driver around the Americas.
Is it true? Did he win a championship at COTA?
He's won 2 there, I think.
Yeah. So he does go well here and he's got sort of a big crowd support.
Yeah, 2 here, 2 in Mexico. So next 2 rounds would be interesting to see how he gets on there.
Famously, he's also won in Brazil. So
I saw a stat. I have
and
no
Abu Dhabi,
idea
actually.
I saw a stat. I have no idea if it's true or not. But Lewis Hamilton is closer to Nico Hülkenberg in the championship than he is to Max Verstappen.
Nico Hülkenberg has 0 points. So does this mean, hang on, I've got the points up somewhere. Here we go.
Whilst Jesse researches that, I was looking at Hamilton's stats earlier and I had to double check this a couple of times. Since 2013, Lewis has only had 9 retirements.
So, yeah, that's not bad.
It's pretty impressive.
That's the mind boggles. Like, it just shows Mercedes' reliability, but it was 1 this year so far, 1 last year, and then previous to that is when it starts getting either 1 or 2, but never more than 2 in a season until you go back to his McLaren days, which I just think it's a bit, when you see how many Grand Prix he's taken part in, I think it was something like 23 total in his entire career.
As a percentage failure rate, that's pretty good. No, Ellie-May is correct with her statistic. So Max Verstappen sits on 366 points and bottom of the pecking order, Nico Hülkenberg has 0. Lewis Hamilton has 180 points, which means he's 180 points ahead of Hülkenberg, but 186 shy of Verstappen. So he is closer to the bottom of the pecking order than he is the top. Ooh, that's bad news if you're a Team LH fan, isn't it?
Well, isn't it
bad for an F1 fan in general, really, considering he's not that far down the standings generally anyway.
No, that's how many points just separate. What is he, 5th from 1st?
Yeah.
You can fit the rest of the pack in behind him.
That's pretty shocking, isn't it?
But these new rigs are working brilliantly, so it's all good.
Oh, they're working magnificently.
It is like the first year in
2014.
Okay, in many, but we haven't heard the British national anthem yet either.
Oh, because there hasn't been a British team win a
America would be the place to do that, just for old time's sake.
Yeah, they love it when the British national anthem is played at their big sporting events. That's why they got rid of it.
They love Lewis, so they wouldn't be opposed to that.
Yeah, this is true.
So when was the last time? Would it be in Brazil?
Saudi last year.
Saudi or when was Qatar?
No, Saudi was the penultimate race.
Yeah. Ooh.
So that would have been the last time we had God Save the Queen.
Yeah.
Correct. Because this is pointed out that because in Extreme E, X44 won in I think it
Argentina?
was Chile. No, Chile.
Yeah, Chile.
And that was the first time that I think that God Save the King was in motorsport. So, and it's Lewis Hamilton related, so there we go. But we will go off on more tangents if we're not careful. So world prediction time, and as I'm talking, I'll start with mine. I'm going to say that this makes sense when I think about it later. If you compare the practice times, Logan Sargent will be quicker than Alex Albon in the practice sessions.
Okay. It makes sense.
I forgot he was replacing Alex Albon, so obviously he can't drive quicker than him in FP1. But I think if you compare, he'll be quicker than Albon in at least one of the practice sessions.
Okay, so yeah, Albon will have FP2 and FP3. So we're looking at
one of those, he'll be slower than Sargent.
FP2 typically, yes, because they're usually race prep runs. They're not usually as fast, but FP3 I think is usually like a run up to quali. So I can see an FP3 run, like Albon and Sargent will be the place to compare.
Yes, but I need one of them to be quicker. So that's where you've had some crummy word predictions lately. So I'm going to get away with this one.
Okay, fine. I'm sorry, I'm not even going to fight it.
Good man. We should get you ill more often. What is your world prediction?
My world prediction is Zhou top 6.
Fair enough. You're a madman. Ellie-May?
I've gone for an Alpine top 5.
Would that be Fernando Alonso?
It can either be Fernando Alonso or Esti. I really don't mind.
Who's their reserve driver this year, just to be on the safe side?
Oscar Piastri, technically.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, of course he is. Oofed.
Your memory is short today.
It's been Friday. It's been one of those days at the Classic Car Weekly offices.
Megan, meanwhile, has potentially the boldest one, considering lately. AlphaTauri double points.
Ooh. That is bold.
Yeah, that is bold.
Granted, it only means they need to be 9th and 10th for that to work, but at the same time, considering what they've been like, I don't know if that is her being ill. I want to defend her there on that one, just in case it is too much to ask for, but I admire her ambition nonetheless.
How did they do last time out?
It's bold. But
I was expecting that to transition into a bold advert. She had such enthusiasm in saying the word there.
It's bold, but maybe possible. I don't know.
Definitely maybe.
Well, let's see. Last year, Gasly retired with a suspension failure, but Tsunoda did come home 9th. So it's.
But also, do you want to just check how they've done the last 2 or 3 Grand Prix of this season?
Irrelevant.
No, Jesse's shaking his head there for those of you who obviously can't see because this is an audio-only podcast, but it's worrying looks on his face. And Ellie-May literally walked out the room because she didn't want to confront AlphaTauri and their recent performances.
It's just too upsetting for me.
It's understandable. They're there.
Anyway.
On that bombshell, I think that's about as much as we can wrap up for this preview episode, unless either of you two have anything else you want to add ahead of this weekend's Austin Grand Prix.
It's not particularly F1 related as such, but I really feel
then we don't care.
I'd like to wish my girlfriend a happy birthday because she'll be listening to this possibly before the weekend, but her birthday's on Saturday. And I feel it'd be wrong to wish Jacob a happy birthday and not seize this opportunity to wish Georgia a happy birthday. I feel 24.
Like it's curious if you're not wishing her a happy birthday on the day itself and you're doing it on a podcast nearly a week earlier. But that's just me.
Well, I'll be wishing her a happy birthday on the day. I'm heading down to hers. I'm taking her out on a nice little... I was about to say what I was about to do for her birthday there. It's a surprise. She doesn't know yet. But
I'm really trying to control myself here.
We'll just say happy birthday. We hope you have an amazing day. We've gone off on so many tangents that we will now close the episode.
If you want a birthday shout out on subsequent episodes of the Undercut podcast, get in touch with us on social media. We'll happily... We'll do like a
cameo. We'll do a cameo.
We'll definitely do it if you subscribe to our Patreon and give us money.
And maybe I will sing Happy Birthday, Mr. President.
She'll even do it in that little white Monroe dress as well. We'll send you the video.
That's an OnlyFans thing. That's not a Cameo thing.
Yeah, that's definitely sort of a Patreon sort of thing. You have to be paid and subscribe to some certain websites for that one. Anyway, we're going off on a tangent as we do tend to do.
It was always Jesse's fault, so we are done for this
Not
episode.
always my fault.
I said, shush. Join us again next week for the American Grand Prix review, where hopefully we will have a guest who isn't ill at the last minute. So fingers crossed, third time lucky on that one.
We do have a guest. Well,
yes, I'm hoping they won't be
ill.
ill, is what I'm saying. It's like you're not even listening to me.
Slightly gummed up ears, got one fluey.
Well, are you ill? You haven't mentioned. Shut up. Ellie-May, where can people find you in the meantime?
They can either find me being a veterinary nurse for my 4 sick cats, or they can find me being a counsellor for Jesse and Thiemo's relationship problems.
Jesse, where can people find you when you're not being a tiresome little boy?
Usually you can find me on all the usual social medias, Instagram and Twitter as Jesse on Cars. We've also got the Undercut podcast over on Twitter, where you'll find all of our usual sort of social media ramblings, plus my occasional belligerent tweetings. And if you like print media, you can support that by buying Classic Car Weekly. We've got a new edition coming out on Wednesday. We're looking ahead to the NEC Classic Motor Show. So lots of goodies and interesting things there. We're also looking back at British motor shows through the years. So there's plenty of pictures of old cars to look at and coo over. Plus we have a crossword as well, which is really worth doing.
Well, how could you possibly resist? As for myself, you can find me over on Is It Fast on the Curbs, where I have a couple of interviews out this week with some European Le Mans drivers, the Nitro RX podcast, Paddock Sorority, and of course Instagram, where you can find links to all those other bits and pieces. All the details for all three of us will be in the description below for this episode, so don't worry, you don't have to rewind and listen to us bickering about where you can find each other. And that is about it for this week's episode. So as we said, join us again next week for the American Grand Prix review.